Hey folks, welcome to the channel. Today we're starting a new build, a push dagger. Not just one, but two push daggers. I'm going to be making it out of this piece of Damascus. This is something I made previously. It's 17 layers of 1095 and 16 layers of 15 and 20. We're going to cut this up, restack it to give us a few more layers. It'll be around 125, 130 layers, and then we'll make our push dagger. I figured on this video I would take you through all the prep that goes into doing a restack for Damascus. I start out by cutting it up on the bandsaw. Now that I've got it cut up into 4, I can take the angle grinder to take the scale off it. This will save belts on the 2x72. Now I'm going to grind smooth all the faces that are going to touch. I've stacked them up, clamped them, and welded the ends. Now into the kerosene and into the forge. When I get the billet up to a red heat, I'll usually take it out, put some of this borax flux on it. That'll keep the scale from forming in the cracks. You know it's hot enough when you take it out of the forge and the borax is steaming off the billet. Here I'm doing some light presses just to set the weld. After 3 heats of setting the weld, now it's nice and set. We can start drawing out the billet. You'll notice this billet is pretty wide. That's because the push dagger handle is pretty wide. We're going to take this down later when we forge in the blade. You'll probably notice this is way more Damascus than we need for this project. Don't worry, we're going to use it for another project coming up. The end of the billet is going to be where our handle is. Now I'm starting to put in a taper where the blade goes. I'm going to cut this section off with the angle grinder, and then we'll start to forge each knife on its own. I started doing a bit of work at the anvil here, but then thought, I'm just going to use the press for all of this. There's no point in trying to hammer this out by hand. Both the blades are still pretty thick at this point, close to 3/8, so time to thin them out and get a little length. I wanted to make sure I had enough width in the handle for the profile that I wanted, so here I'm putting them sideways and just fullering them out a little bit. They were still a little too thick, so I figured I would draw them out even more. And now finally, just making sure they're flat. So we got the forging done on these, and before anyone says, oh, you didn't forge them to shape, there's a reason I didn't forge these to shape. Because they have a fuller in them, I want to do those on the mill. So what I'm actually going to end up doing is grinding these sides perfectly straight, and then locking it in the mill and then milling this section, and that will give me my center line, and then I will be able to grind out the rest. So it's really hard to do a fuller like this with not inside the mill. It's a really narrow fuller, so that's what we're going to do. Then I'm probably going to end up, once I get them, I have the center line, somehow I'm going to clamp them together. I'm going to see if I can do most of the grinding with them clamped together so that I have them identical. Here I'm grinding the sides parallel so that I can lock them in the vise on the mill. Just like before, I'm using the angle grinder to get rid of all that scale before I ruin any of my belts. A few minutes on the surface grinder and we'll get these all nice and flat. This is obviously sped up quite a bit. Milling in each fuller took about 10 minutes each. So we got the fullers done in these. They look pretty good. They're a little deeper than I wanted, but I'm sure they'll be fine once all these are ground, because I did want it to taper. And they're not really that thick, but we'll see how it goes. I'm sure it'll turn out just fine. So I've got my pattern here. And one tip for you guys, when you're doing patterns like this, even on knife print or if you're drawing them, one thing I always do is when you're going to cut it out, instead of just cutting the whole thing out, they're never symmetrical, because the way there's not a, I wish knife print had a draw half the knife and then mirror it so that the points are exactly the same, but they never are. So what I do is fold it down the center line like this, and then cut it out on one side, because then you know it's perfectly mirrored. So that's a good tip for you guys. So I'm going to cut the other one out. I'm going to glue these on and go do the rough profiling. I figured I should grind each knife separately before I stack them together and do the final profile with them clamped together. You can see I have a few issues here trying to hold the 1, 2, 3 block while also grinding. It doesn't work out that well. There, instead of holding this, I just put a 3/8 bolt through here, so this was nice and solid. Be a lot easier now. I can't say enough good things about these can't twist clamps. If you don't have any, go get some. Links down in the description. Now it's time to do some bevels. Let's start with some scribe lines. I'm starting here with a used 36 grit belt just to break the edges. If you start with a new belt, you're just going to knock all the abrasives off it. I do this to all 8 bevels before I move to a new belt. If you haven't used these belts, definitely go get some. I'm going to show you, this is a brand new belt. I'm going to show you what this looks like after grinding both of these blades. Hey, I just want to stop and show you guys something. When you're doing a dagger, don't be afraid to go past your center line on the first grind, because as you can see, I'm going to do this one, and then the next one, you'll get your center ridge from when you grind this one, because you need to grind a lot off, and you're going to be grinding more off over here, and that's going to bring your distal taper up. So you'll see when I grind this one what happens. So there they are after initial grind. Came up pretty good, nice and even. And something I wanted to show you guys. Check that out. That belt looks brand new, and I just did 8 bevels on it. Pretty cool. Here they are after grinding, at least the initial grind. They feel very stabby. So pretty cool. Next thing, I'm gonna drill a couple holes. I'll drill some pin holes. I'm probably gonna put 2 pins in each one for the scales. Do a couple weight reduction holes. They're just a tiny bit handle heavy. And then I'm going to just do a little filing and just round this stuff out here so it's not as hard on your hands. Let's go do it. Well, I just did something dumb. I went and filed this, but I got a little over anxious and filed up here. But of course, I forgot about the handle. So the handle scales are going to cover that area, and now it's beveled, which means I'm going to get a crazy bevel, you know, against the handle scale, which is going to look dumb. So I need to take these back to the small wheel and flatten these right here, because I want the scales to come to about there. Since I'm going to have to clamp them together to grind this part, I figured I would do the holes as well for the pins. So 2 pins, going to do one here and one here.
I forgot to turn the camera on when drilling the holes, but I imagine you've seen holes drilled before. As usual, I've already normalized this blade and done 2 grain reduction cycles. Now it's time for quench. This was 10 series steel, so this was quenched in Parks 50. I ground into the handle on each of the knives just to remove any decarb, and now I'm testing them on the tester.
So here we are after temper. Let's check the hardness now. $61.5. Here they are after the temper. You just saw me check the hardness. Actually, that one was the highest one. When I did a couple of them, they ended up being right around 59.5. So that first one was an anomaly, but yeah, they're right around 59.5, maybe 60. So really good. So I'm pretty happy with them. We're going to wrap it up here, but I'll show you what I'm thinking for the handle material. We're going to use carbon fiber. I've never used carbon fiber before, and I love the way it looks, so we're going to do that. And we're going to put some red G10 liners, really because this is 1/8 inch, so I needed to give it a little height. So we're going to do that, and of course we're going to do black G10 pins in the pinholes. All right, so stay tuned next time, folks. We will finish this off. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next one.